Happy Tuesday, witches. It is Tuesday, June 23rd, I'm pretty sure. No, I guess it's the 24th now because it's Tuesday. And Father's Day and the solstice was 22nd. Have I got this right? Oh, it is the 23rd. So only yesterday was the 22nd and Father's Day was the 21st. My days got all messed up because I spent like 90% of Monday painting. But I like that. Okay, but I digress. All right, so Tuesdays, and I'm sorry I didn't do the Monday week at a glance. I literally painted all day, and I couldn't make myself do anything else. Not even call my mother. And we take the good with the bad, you know? That's part of life. And, today's in the kitchen. Tuesdays are in the kitchen. But here, and we talk about, that which we take into ourselves sometimes, right? And remembrance is this thing that I'm always reminded about, especially at Pride. And, there's always a yearly reminder for me during June to remember that as much as there are good reasons for pride, because there are wonderfully good reasons for pride, there's also the remembrance factor. The remembrance factor of those who never made it this far, those who were not given the opportunity to live authentically, those who were not given the ability to live a full life because people always think, oh, why does pride matter? And I know, I'm sure I talk about this every June, but that's because it needs to be said every June, because remembrance is important. Let's look at this from a spiritual standpoint. Part of Jewish practice is the fact that in the height of happiness, every time something good is happening, we have to remember and acknowledge and give care and consideration to the fact that things are not always good, and in the time of success we still have ones we have lost, no matter what that means to you. Such as I personally always have this message on my mind during Pride from a standpoint of the fact that our government didn't care to find a cure for AIDS or HIV or do anything about the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s, because so many people, were terrified. That's why L is first in LGBTQ, because the lesbians were the ones who cared for those with HIV and AIDS. But that's not the point of today's message, although if you didn't know that, now you know. But so many people thought that gay men deserved to die for me. I don't even like saying it out loud, but that was a fact. That's why, you see commercials all the time now for PrEP and stuff, but back then, well, AIDS is a 4-letter word, but it's actually an acronym, but AIDS was a 4-letter word. HIV was a 4-letter word. It was dirty to talk about. It was dirty to think about. It was dirty to concern yourself with. And that face is not about AIDS. It is about people who acted and thought that way about it. People who treated human beings as nothing. And that is what I think about when I say this about the remembrance in the time of happiness, the remembrance in the time of still fighting for rights, but remembering those who aren't here for whatever reason. And I just saw the Children's Hour last night. It's a beautiful movie with Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine. And when I say beautiful, I mean painfully beautiful. It is sad. It is heartbreaking. I was not expecting the end. I wasn't ready for it, but that really happened. Because in the end, Shirley MacLaine acknowledges that she is a gay woman in the 1960s. She is a lesbian in the 1960s, and that is a truth she can't live with. And so she doesn't. And I was not ready for that because I've never even heard of this movie before I put it on yesterday. But that's also part of the remembrance piece. That is part of it. Because some of those who aren't here, it's not because AIDS took them from us. And it's not because the physical rage of someone took them from us, like Matthew Shepard and so many others who died like Matthew Shepard. Or were otherwise physically assaulted, like Brandon Tina, who I don't remember if Brandon Tina is still with us or not, but these are the stories from my youth that helped shape my life view. But, you know, the Children's Hour shows us the other end of that, which we see and talk about all the time when we talk about the trans rights that are being taken away and taken up to the courts constantly. Because when you can't be who you are, when you can't accept living in a world that won't accept you for who you are, you leave that world, which is what Shirley MacLaine's character did, which I was not expecting, but is a very heartbreakingly real possibility when you are talking about people living their life in a world that won't accept everyone for who they are. In a world where we can still argue, and by we, I don't mean me, but human beings feel like they can still argue about the rights of other human beings, no matter what way they choose to live or are living or are made, because we were born this way. We were all born the way we were born. But hate, you're not born hating, you're taught to hate. You choose hate. And that is a part of pride that we have to remember as well, that we are overcoming all that hate and we are remembering those who did not overcome that hate, not through something in themselves that was broken, but something in the world that was broken. And that is what I talk about in the kitchen today as I cook eggs, because whether you choose to take that remembrance into yourself or not, it's very important that some of us hold on to those memories, that some of us acknowledge, even if we all don't have the capacity for it. But remembrance is important for not just humanity. It's important for energy. So that's what I had to talk about today. Not to be a bummer, but this is always heavy in my heart because, you know, like I talked about with how the government, allowed AIDS to run rampant because it was doing God's work. That's how I feel about that statement. But that's always heavy in my heart. But these other things that are reasons as well to remember are also heavy in my heart, but not always as prevalent in my mind because of my own lived experience. And I'm thankful that I didn't have anyone who took themselves out because of that. Because I am fortunate enough to live in a part of worldview, my worldview, the people I know have all been able to live their lives. They didn't feel the need to take themselves out because they couldn't stand to live in this world that way. Because of other people, not because of themselves. You know what? I'm going to stop rambling. I hope you get it. I hope you get it. And I hope that remembrance is something that you allow yourself to do, because we should all remember. If we don't remember, we allow history to repeat.